So this is episode 2 of the creating of my gamified system, in which I want to focus today on figuring out that first pillar when it comes to gamification, of figuring out that greater purpose, figuring out that greater meaning as to what we're working towards. You look towards video games and you see that there is always this character that you play that is being destined to destroy the big bad guy. It is their job. It is this greater meaning that they have to do. They can live their life in a nice, just kind of comfortable way, but no, they have to go level up and defeat that big bad guy. And that's what I kind of want to try and capture with this. I don't know exactly where this is going to go, but I do know that I want to have that greater meaning of what is the system and why should you care about it? Because at the base level, the system itself is just a... Nope. It is just a to-do tracker. And when thinking about it in this regard, we have to go, okay, why should I care about that? Why am I caring about a to-do list? A lot of the times when we see these to-do lists, it's simply a area that we go to when we need to know what we're doing next. I want to move past that. See, in case you don't know about me, my past decade and a bit has been working in design, marketing, and even teaching. So in each of these areas, I've had this drive to understand the end user and how to get them to do the thing that I want them to do. In design, it's creating these elements to go, okay, how do I get the end person that's looking at this to focus their eyes on this area, then this area, then this area? And how do I make them care about this message? In marketing, it's quite like the saying where it is, how do I get them to care about this message? But also, how do I get them to act in a certain way? How do I get them to buy this thing? How do I get them to go to this event? And then when it comes to teaching, one of the things I loved was, how do I get people to understand this concept? How do I get people to go, aha, I've learned something? In each of these, it's not based around what I can do. It's based around how to effectively get the person at the end to think about something in a different way. And all the while, every single time, I found that there is one key aspect that gets people to believe something. And that is stories. As a human race, we are based around telling stories. We are based around the cave paintings that go, don't go in this area, there's a dangerous tiger. We go, okay, vote for this person because they're doing this, this, and this. And with that, we have to stop to think, okay, what is the story that we're telling ourselves? Because again, at a base level, this is a productivity tracker. It's a to-do list. But how do I make it feel like there is something more? See, this is also an aspect in branding, in case you were ever looking at creating a brand. It's not simply, oh, here is my logo, here is my thing, and here's what I do. It's telling the story that people are going to believe. One of my favorite brands, even though I don't wear a lot of them, is Nike. And it's not because, oh, they make the top tier products, oh, they do this. It's because their brand is in itself a story. Every time you see Nike, it's not just, oh, they're that running brand, or oh, they're that sports brand. They're that brand that has just do it as their thing. Their whole story is about empowering people to do better and just go achieve the things that they want to achieve. That in itself is amazing branding because it's a great story. And that's all brands are. They're amazing stories. So how do I influence this to tell the story that I want? So if we think about it, what is the core driver behind this? Well, we want to improve. People don't use these sorts of things because they want to be worse at work. They want to be better at doing the things that they want to do. Okay, so that's a thing. The idea of becoming better. Now, if I'm using the gamified aspect, there's also leveling up. That is not how you spell leveling, but anyway. If I can convince people that it's not just, oh, here's the thing I need to do, but it is a self-driven, motivated action that in doing so makes you better in the long run and you keep getting better and better. That said, there's also something to be said about the whole context of leveling up nowadays. It's so overdone, in my opinion, and every time I've seen it, it's been this weird tacky aspect that I'm not 100% sure of. When it comes to the wording, I'm sure I'll figure it out in time. But when it comes to this, it is mainly that need to improve and better ourselves. So how do I tell that in a story that people care about? Well, if we go back to, say, the video games and whatnot, we have the same mentality. We want to improve, we want to level up, but there's still that end level boss. There's still that greater aspect than just making ourselves better, because we're making ourselves better for a purpose. So is there a boss? Or is there some sort of cause that we can rattle around? Because this is going to be that greater purpose, something that we can all join together in will to defeat it, to be a force against this thing. Now, I was thinking about this, and I came up with something that was slightly tacky, but I think might be the direction I go in, at least for the first part, because I find it funny, and I feel that there's a lot of visuals around it that I can play with. So the process I went through is trying to figure out, okay, what am I trying to defeat? Procrastination? Not progress. Is procrastination the thing I'm trying to be? Well, what's another word that could be worked in relation to that? Procrastination is simply not moving forward. It's not doing the thing you want to do. What's another word for that? Another word. Stagnation. Being still, not making any progress. I really love the idea of fighting stagnation. Like, it's this idea that we are stuck, but we can move forward. And in thinking about this, I really liked that word and started looking at it more and realized that technically it's two words as well. Stag and then nation. And that in itself brought up all of these ideas of like, oh, well, here's all these fantasy creatures that could be like horned creatures, and the main like big boss is a stag-based thing. This thing with huge antlers that's this overwhelming force. And then I started, well, and you can see already the way I'm talking about this, I found that passion. I found that greater cause of, oh, we're fighting stagnation, which is the idea that we are stuck and we want to move forward. That ticks off, okay, we want to improve, and we technically will need to level up in order to continue doing this. But having this sort of, like, I'm terrible at drawing antlers, so excuse me, but like, if we have some sort of like boss that has this sort of visual of, oh, well, here's this sort of evil beast. Like, this icon. And from that, we can derive all of these other sort of enemies that we need to fight along the way as we level up. All the while, we're fighting this stagnation. Stag. Oh, that's M. Stagnation. Okay, well, with that, here is the motive that I'm going with. I'm going against this giant sort of monster of a group that we all have to fight. We don't even realize that we need to. And there's so many stories that can be developed off of it. And that in itself is the branding. It's this idea that we are fighting this cause. We are doing leveling up and creating these characters so that we can fight back against this. And I love that. I love this idea of having this other group, this overwhelming force that we fight against. Everyone was already fighting it, but we didn't know it. It's this secretive group almost. And then from that, I can have all these different enemies and visuals that we can be fighting against, making it a very gamified visual aspect that we can engage with. And the theming of it's really fun as well. These horned beasts, these creatures of evil. And I think I figured out an aspect of, well, how can I do all of this? And that's by having this external force. And that in itself is going to be the brand inside of the system. The brand itself is going to be based around leveling up and fighting and whatnot. But having an enemy that we can fight against was something that clicked and I absolutely loved. And I think that's what's going to be what I'm doing for the next however long with this series. Developing this enemy, developing the branding behind all of this, and then creating the system so that it reminds us, hey, here's what we're fighting. But also not making it so much of a gimmick where it's like, oh, we're fighting the same deer again. And that's, I think, where the next stages are going to be coming up, especially when I'm developing the enemies, going, okay, how can I make these varied enough where it feels like it is constantly new, but at the same time, you are still realizing that this is something you need to take action on. It is an aspect of a larger system. But yeah, that is the basics of how I planned on going about creating the meaning of this brand, the meaning of this system, because it's all good and well to be self-driven and leveling up yourself, which is what I've been doing for the longest time. But if I want to make this a more commonly used system that people can rally around, I need to have that story. I need to have that purpose behind it. And by having this faceless enemy, this beast, this army of beasts, really, it plays back to that whole thing of like man versus creature that we've had ever since the caveman days. Like I said, there was always these drawings of don't go over there. There's this like big teethed beast that will kill us. And over time we can develop and maybe play around with different types of enemies, and hell, there might even be different enemies that are based on different nations. So instead of the stag nation, it could be some other like play on words. Something, again, to be figured out at later dates. For now, I have an MVP, a most viable product that I can play around with and go, okay, cool. If I figure this out, down the road, I can make many other different versions, but by having that one cause, I can figure out the wording, I can figure out the messaging, I can play around with actually the brand itself and start developing that as well. Now, if you are interested in this topic, please leave a comment down below. I can talk about brand for ages. Again, spent a lot of my career thus far doing stuff like branding, so figuring out these stories. Now that I have this weird fantasy one, it like merges all of my loves. Like you can see up there, like I have a love of fantasy and creatures and being able to craft them and the stories around them. So if this seems of interest to you, and you haven't actually signed up, I am going to be doing different review stages when it comes to this product. So in the description below, I do have a link that you can sign up to early and get first, I guess, access to the testing realm of this. Give your own feedback, see what works for you and whatnot, because eventually this is going to be a paid product, but if you get in now, you will be getting a version for free. So if that seems of interest to you, again, that link is down in the description. But if you're just here trying to steal some ideas and get some motivation, then absolutely feel free to join along with this story to see how it develops. Because I'm going to be going through some different stages. If you don't know what I'm working on yet, go to my previous video. It has a different sort of overarching view of the product. This is more just in the weeds, getting stuff done. So yeah, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, feel free to click subscribe. I'm going to be uploading quite a few videos that documents this journey and the different stages that we're going through. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you next time.